What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you live from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And you might be wondering why we're doing a history of video live stream on a Saturday night. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but I do have bad seasonal allergies and I feel like something's coming my way, so I very well might be getting sick very soon. So I'd rather get the video up today rather than have to postpone it for a few more days and possibly have it after the season starts. Ideally, I set a goal that I wanted all of the American League history of videos to be up before the 2021 season began. So we're going to get that done. So here we are. We're going to discuss the history of the Los Angeles Angels. So they have a bit of an interesting start. So in 1940, the St. Louis Browns attempted to relocate to Los Angeles, and the American League voted no. So 2 years later, the Browns once more tried to move to Los Angeles. This time, they got closer, and they even had drawn up a schedule for moving to Los Angeles. However, the attack on Pearl Harbor in December of 1941 would delay the move, as no sports would be played on the West Coast. Basically, everyone was terrified. They're like, okay, how are you going to get to Los Angeles if there's a team in Los Angeles? What if there's lockdowns? What if, the government says you can't travel to California, Oregon, Washington? What are you going to do? What is the plan? And they couldn't think of a logical reason. And of course, the vote was set to happen the day after. So, with such little time to actually get answers, they just unanimously voted down the move. So, the Browns would end up moving to Baltimore in 1954, but Los Angeles was still insistent on getting a Major League Baseball team. In 1957, they did get an NL team in the form of the then Brooklyn Dodgers. However, the American League still wanted a team in the city, as Los Angeles is a very lucrative market. So in 1960, both the American League and the National League agreed to expand their division or their leagues by two teams apiece. The American League granted an expansion team to the city of Los Angeles, which would be named the Angels. Now, this expansion team was owned by singer actor Gene Autry. So now we get to their first season, which is 1961. And they did get a couple of key players in the expansion draft, including but not limited to shortstop Jim Fergossi, catcher Buck Rogers, and outfielder Albie Pearson. Now the Angels would play their inaugural season in Wrigley Field, Los Angeles. Not the one in Chicago, of course. Now Los Angeles actually had a 435 winning percentage in their first season, which is the record for an expansion team in its first year. Now they would move to Dodger Stadium in 1962. And Bo Belinsky ends up throwing the franchise's first no hitter later that season. Now, the team would actually lead the American League in the July of 1962, but they would fall down to third place in the conference or the division, the league, I should say. Now, that was very surprising. An expansion team, leading the league through a year and a half of its existence. It's unheard of, especially in the 1960s. So, following an okay season, they did okay, but they would end up just kind of falling to okay. So, following an average okay 1965, the team would move from Los Angeles to Anaheim, and they would move to the newly constructed Anaheim Stadium. The team was renamed the California Angels following the move. Now, they would actually lead the American League in attendance in 1966, which was, of course, their first season in the new stadium. Now, Albie Pearson ends up getting released after the 1966 season, as he wasn't doing that great. Now, they took part in a five-team pennant race in 1967. And the 1967 AL pennant race is one of the closest monitored, best pennant races in baseball history. Unfortunately, the Angels were team 5 of 5 as they were the first team to bow out. They did, however, play spoiler and got their revenge on one of those teams by eliminating the Detroit Tigers from the contention on the final day of the season. Following the 1969 season, Buck Rogers would retire from playing. So the 1960s were a very kind decade to the expansion team, but they did not win any pennants. So now we get to the 1970s. And after a pair of mediocre seasons to open up the new decade, the Angels would make a big move. They would trade shortstop Jim Fregosi to the Mets in exchange for a package that was headlined by starting pitcher Nolan Ryan. So Ryan truly blossomed in California, after finally being given a chance to start. Prior to the 1973 season, the Angels would also acquire starting pitcher Frank Tanana. So Ryan would have a great 1973 season where he set the Major League Baseball single season record for strikeouts with 383. He also threw a pair of no hitters. Now, he would throw four no hitters within 3 seasons: 73, 74, 75. Now, other than Ryan, unfortunately, the rest of the team was average and forgettable. So in September of 1978, they they had just signed a player named Lyman Bostock. And Bostock ends up getting murdered after a game against the White Sox. So this, of course, kind of completely ripped the heart and soul of the team because they just had one of their teammates get murdered. That's amazing. That's just you can't recover from that quickly. It's not something that's easily recoverable. So prior to the 1979 season, the team would acquire second baseman Rod Carew from Minnesota. Now, we discussed this in our very first history of video. The owner of the Twins at the time had made some racist comments and specifically went after Carew when he was making the comments. So Carew demanded a trade. California was the team that was lucky enough to get him. So the Angels would respond well to Crew's acquisition, and they would go on to win the American League West for their first ever time, thus clinching the team's first ever postseason appearance. However, they would fall to the Baltimore Ravens or the Baltimore Orioles in the ALCS. Now, the single season of success ended with a sour taste as Nolan Ryan left the team via free agency. So the Angels GM stated that Ryan, whose record in 1971 was 16 and 14, could be replaced, quote, with two players who go 8 and 7, end quote. Now, this GM would later admit that this was, quote, the worst mistake I ever made in all my years in baseball, end quote. Essentially, remember, back in the day, people cared so much about records. You cared more about wins and ERA than anything else. So this was just a simple time difference. He looked at the wins and he said, okay, well, he goes 16 and 14. That's easily replaceable. Yes, but no. Big mistake, big regret. Nolan Ryan would come back to haunt the loss of Nolan Ryan would come back to haunt the Angels for years to come. They did not win any pennants in the 1970s. So now we get to the 1980s. And before the 1980 season began, the NFL's Los Angeles Rams would move to Anaheim Stadium. Now, this upset some of the fans of the Angels as the scenic views of the San Gabriel and Santa Ana Mountains were replaced by concrete. Because if you don't know how the old stadiums worked, you had to have these domes and like it had to be more circular for the NFL teams. And rather than have these nice views of the mountains that you used to be able to see, and I almost made the thumbnail picture of one, but it was really tough to get it. You instead got these ugly views of concrete bleachers, and that upset a lot of fans. So, this also made the stadium's seating capacity way too high for baseball, which made the ballpark look worse as it looked far more empty than it really was. So, there's a problem right there. Following a rough 1980 season, California would trade away starting pitcher Frank Tanana. Now, the team had a rough 1981 season, which was one of the strike shortened years. So before 1982, the Angels would sign outfielder Reggie Jackson. Now, the team responded to his arrival and went on to win the American League West once more. They proceeded to blow a 2-0 series lead, and they were the first ever team to do so in the ALCS. So there was a book written about the Angels, and Steve Bishop was one of the writers. This book was called Tales from the Angels Dugout. He wrote, quote, no team in history had ever come back from a 0-2 deficit to win a best of 5 series. Of course, no team had ever faced the Angels in that situation, end quote. Basically, it just goes to show you the Angels, kind of good, but not great. Couldn't hold on, couldn't win. Everyone was kind of like, okay, this team, who knows what they're going to do. So the team had a rough year in 1983, but they did hang around the top of the AL West for the next 2 years in 84 and 85. After the 1985 season, second baseman Rod Carew would retire. Essentially, he was released by the team. He wasn't going to make the team, and no one pursued him. So he eventually received a settlement of about $750,000 after an arbitrator ruled that MLB owners did collude against signing him alongside other players as well, but Crew was the biggest name in that group. So losing Crew hurt, but he wasn't the same player he was years prior. And in 1986, starting pitcher Chuck Finley did debut for the team, so there's a plus. In that season, the Angels once more repeated as AL West champions. Now, they had two opportunities to make their first ever World Series. They were one out away in game four of the ALCS, but they blew it. Now, game five's the more painful one. So they were up 5-2 in the ninth inning of that game five. Keep in mind, best of five ALCS. So they only need three outs. And unfortunately for them, a pair of home runs ended their hopes of winning the American League. Closer Donnie Moore was the one who gave up the series losing home run in the ninth inning to Boston. The fans turned all their anger towards him, and he was never the same after that. Reggie Jackson, fed up with the constant disappointment, would walk after the season. Now, the decade ended with tragedy as Donnie Moore committed suicide in July of 1989. Again, the fans just really didn't let him live it down. Now, he really struggled to get over the ALCS home run because he felt a lot of pressure from that. It really hurt him. And of course, the fans just kept trashing him. So, no pennants were won in the 1980s. So now we get to the 90s. And the Angels were an average team to start off the new decade. In 1992, outfielder Tim Saleman would debut for the team. In May of that year, the team's bus would actually crash while on the Jersey Turnpike. No players were seriously hurt, but their manager, Buck Rogers, who had formerly played for the team, ended up missing nearly 3 months due to his injuries. Now, the team was still struggling on the field in the middle of the decade, which included one of the franchise's worst seasons during the strike shortened 1992 year. The following year, in 1995, the Angels seemed to turn the ship around and they would hold an 11-game lead in the AL West in August. However, they would suffer a massive collapse and faced a one-game playoff. Unfortunately for them, they would lose, once again crushing the fan base's hopes and dreams. By the mid to late 1990s, Gene Autry's health, again, he was the owner of the team, was becoming an issue. His wife was making most of the decisions for the team, but the Disney Corporation, who was a minority owner of the team, also had some sway. So this led to a power struggle at the top. By 1996, Disney had effectively taken control of the team. Gene Autry remained as the chairman of the board, but his role was merely in title, not power. He was just there. They just said, you know what, we'll give him a title. We're not going to do anything more. Following the 1995 season, the Rams did move out of California, moving to St. Louis. The Angels made it known that they wanted Anaheim Stadium to be renovated or they would leave the area in general. So in November of 96, the Angels announced that they would be called the Anaheim Angels instead of California. Now, this was in part due to Disney wanting to make the city of Anaheim a destination city. So the name California also didn't fit anymore given the time, as the state now had four teams. Of course, the Angels, the Dodgers, the Oakland Athletics, who when the Angels became a team, they were still in Kansas City, and the Padres, who were an expansion team from that time frame as well. So it just didn't fit anymore. Now, for the 1997 season, the team would change its uniform and logo. These uniforms were universally ridiculed, being referred to as the softball beer league uniforms by Chris Berman of the NFL and as the periwinkle jerseys by many Angel fans. No one liked those uniforms. During the 1997 season, the city of Anaheim agreed to renovate the aging stadium, making it a single sports arena once more. The stadium changed its name to the Edison International Field of Anaheim prior to the 1998 season. With the off the field turmoil at an end, finally, the team's on the field performance finally started to look good. The team would finish second in the AL West in 1997 and in 1998. In 1998, third baseman Troy Glass would debut for the team. Unfortunately, following the conclusion of the 98 season, Gene Autry would pass away. The team would sink below 500 to close out the decade and the millennium. So the 90s ended without any pennants for the team, unfortunately, once more. So now we get to the 2000s. And in the before the 2000 season began, longtime pitcher Chuck Finley would walk via free agency. So the team would hire manager Mike Scioscia prior to the season. Now the team would hang around 500 to open up the decade. Then came 2002. So the team just got rid of the periwinkle jerseys and went back to the ones that looked similar to the old jerseys. So the Angels would start off the 2002 season slowly, but they caught fire as the year progressed. They went at, they went an all time, at the time, they went at, a franchise best 99-63 record, which was the franchise best record at that point in time. And this clinched them a wild card berth. Now, during that season, a pair of pitchers made their debuts, and a relief pitcher, Francisco Rodriguez, and starting pitcher, John Lackey. Now, they would go on to upset the New York Yankees in the ALDS, and they would knock out the Twins in the ALCS. So this put them, for the first ever time in franchise history, in the World Series. So they were matched up with their in-state rival, San Francisco Giants. So the World Series saw the Angels, for once, rally well down. They were down 5 games to 0 in the seventh inning of Game 6, and the team rallied, winning the game. They won Game 7, clinching the franchise its first ever World Series title. Now, unfortunately, the team would struggle in their title defense the following season, but this mostly had to do with off the field changes again. Disney would sell the team in May of 2003 to a group known as Angels Baseball LP. In 2004, the team would sign outfielder Vladimir Guerrero and starting pitcher Bartolo Colon. The stadium would be renamed Angel Stadium of Anaheim. So the team would win the AL West, but unfortunately, they were swept in the ALDS by the eventual World Series champion Boston Red Sox. So, following the season, third baseman Troy Glass left via free agency. And in January of 2005, the team was renamed the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Ownership announced the move, stating, "The inclusion of Los Angeles reflects the original expansion name and returns the Angels as Major League Baseball's American League representative of the greater Los Angeles territory." End quote. This led to a lawsuit when the city of Anaheim, who had support from Los Angeles and all cities in Orange County, sued Angels ownership, citing a violation of the lease. By 2006, the courts had ruled with the team, and all charges were dropped in 2009. Still, this was an ugly chapter for the team. So, in 2005, despite the off the field drama, the team managed to win the AL West once more. They would fall in the ALCS to the eventual World Series champion, Chicago White Sox. So, just a little interesting thing there. You know, you lost to a team that ended its curse, a long curse, in 2005 and in 2004. So, kind of crazy. Kind of crazy. Outfielder Tim Saleman would retire after the 2006 season. The team had a great season in 2007, but they would fall in the ALDS. The team had its franchise best season in 2008, and they would acquire first baseman Mark Teixeira to help make a push for the World Series. Unfortunately, the team would fall in the ALDS once more. Following the 2008 season, both starting pitcher Bartolo Colon and relief pitcher Francisco Rodriguez would walk in free agency. Mark Teixeira, the recently acquired first baseman, also walked in free agency. Now, the one silver lining to this move was that him walking gave the Angels the 25th pick in the 2009 MLB draft, which they'd used to select some high school outfielder named Mike Trout. I don't know if he'll be important, but we'll talk about him at some point, maybe. In early 2009, starting pitcher Nick Aidenhart was killed in a hit and run hours after he started a game for the Angels. He was one of the top prospects for the team at that time. Now, this tragedy, coupled with multiple injuries to the team's starting rotation, led to some massive question marks for this team. The team did well given the circumstances, and they did make the playoffs once more. They would fall in the ALCS, though. Change was on the horizon. The team let outfielder Vladimir Guerrero and starting pitcher John Lackey walk in free agency, but they did sign outfielder Hideki Matsui. So the 2000s were one of the first solid decades for this team as they won their first AL pennant and they would go on to win that World Series in 2002. So 2010s came in, and in 2010, the Angels seemed to start off this new decade hot. Unfortunately, they would cool off pretty quickly after one of their first basemen, Kendrys Morales, would break his leg celebrating a walk-off grand slam. The team could never find a replacement for his bat, but they did acquire starting pitcher Dan Heron at the trade deadline. Now, Hideki Matsui would walk from the team in free agency following the season. In 2011, that 25th overall pick from 2009, outfielder Mike Trout, would make his debut for the team. The team would remain above 500, but they did not make the playoffs. Before the 2012 season, the team signed first baseman Albert Pujols to a massive 10-year contract. After a down 2013, the Angels played well in 2014, making the playoffs once more. They were swept in the ALDS. After the 2015 season, the Angels became the Los Angeles Angels, dropping the of Anaheim from their name. Before the 2018 season, the Angels would sign Japanese sensation designated hitter starting pitcher Shohei Ohtani. Now, after a pair of 80 and 82 seasons in 2017 and 2018, manager Mike Scioscia stepped down. In July of 2019, starting pitcher Tyler Skaggs would pass away from a drug overdose. The team would end up throwing a no-hitter shortly after his passing. A very emotional moment in baseball. Mike Trout would win his third AL MVP in 2019. They did not win any pennants, but they did have some good individual moments, specifically with Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. Ohtani looked very good. So now we get to the 2020s. And 2020s was an interesting year for them. So they did hire Joe Madden, one of the biggest names in the coaching market, to be their manager. And they also signed free agent third baseman Anthony Rendon. Now they ended the year third in a very weak AL West. So that's their history. The Angels have won one AL pennant, and they did go on to win that World Series, which was, of course, 2002. 14 people with ties to the Angels are currently inducted in the Cooperstown Hall of Fame. That's as of right now. That number can always go up every January. Now, they have 6 retired numbers at this point in time. Number 11, Jim Fregosi. Number 26, Gene Autry. Now, you might be wondering, the owner, why'd he get number 26 retired? He was considered the team's 26th man. Remember, for the longest time, baseball had 25-man rosters. Number 29 is retired for Rod Carew. Number 30 is retired for Nolan Ryan. Number 42, of course, league-wide retired for Jackie Robinson. And number 50 was retired for Jimmy Reese, who was a coach for the team for 22 years. Now, I do have a quick correction to make. I did say that California had 4 teams. They actually had 5 teams at that point in time in the 90s. They also had the Giants. I missed them. I apologize for that. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was the history of the Los Angeles Angels. If you're an Angels fan, a lot of people like you guys. They do have some hate, of course, throughout the majors, but that's just because you got Los Angeles in your name. People don't necessarily hate the Angels. I've yet to meet somebody who tells me, oh yeah, I hate the Angels. I can't stand the Angels. I myself am a big Mike Trout fan. You guys have a bright future. I'm also a big Shohei Ohtani fan. So if you're an Angels fan, good luck. Hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a good rest of your day.